You know that one coworker who thinks they're the smartest person in the office? Yeah, mine learned the hard way that underestimating me was their biggest mistake. So I 2-4F work at a mid-sized marketing agency in the US. I actually like my job, creative projects, cool clients, and overall a fun team. The only exception, Kyle.Kyle29M, is the kind of coworker who thinks every woman in the office exists to either admire him or fetch him coffee. He constantly corrects me in meetings even when he's wrong, steals credit for ideas, and calls me kiddo like we're in some 1950s sitcom. Now, I'm not the kind of person who likes drama. I usually just roll my eyes and get back to work. But after what he pulled last month, I knew I had to do something. Here's what happened. Our team was preparing a pitch for a big client. I had been working on this campaign for weeks, late nights, endless research, designing slides, until my eyes went blurry. The day before the presentation, Kyle swooped in like some corporate vulture. He took my work, slapped his name on it, and presented it to our manager as if it was all his. My jaw actually dropped when I saw my campaign deck in his hands with my notes still on the margins. My manager didn't notice, and Kyle just smirked at me, like, "What are you going to do about it, kiddo?" That was the last straw. Now, I could have gone straight to HR. But honestly, that felt boring. I wanted something sweeter. Something that would sting just enough to make him think twice before messing with me again. So I came up with a plan. Our office has a shared drive for all projects. Everyone knows you never touch someone else's folder unless invited. Basic office etiquette? Well, Kyle didn't respect boundaries, so I decided to use that against him. I created a duplicate version of my campaign deck. In this version, everything looked polished at first glance. But I made some tiny, subtle changes, like changing the client's brand name slightly. Greensprout Organics became Greensnout Organics, using outdated slogans, and throwing in a few industry facts that weren't quite right. It was still professional enough that if you skimmed, you'd think it was legit. But if you actually used it in front of the client, you'd look like a complete idiot then. I left that altered deck in my folder, knowing Kyle couldn't resist snooping again, and surprise, surprise, the very next morning I saw him casually open the wrong file. He copied it to his desktop with this smug little smile, clearly thinking he'd outsmarted me again. I almost felt bad. Almost what happened in the client meeting. Well, let's just say the look on Kyle's face when the client stopped him mid-sentence and asked, "Why are you calling us Greensnout?" was priceless. The client meeting was supposed to be our agency's big win. Everyone was dressed sharp. The conference room was spotless, and our manager was buzzing with nervous excitement. Kyle, of course, strutted in like he was the star of the show. He carried the deck under his arm, leaning back in his chair with that smug grin plastered on his face. I sat a few seats down, pretending to look focused on my notes, but really, I was waiting for the fireworks. The first couple of slides went smoothly because they were just generic intros. But the moment Kyle got into the meat of the campaign, everything started crumbling. Here at Greensnout Organics, he began. The client raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me, did you just say Greensnout?" Kyle froze. He stammered, Yes, that's your company name, right?" The client shook their heads slowly, looking very unimpressed. "It's Greensprout. With AP, we've been around for 15 years. I would expect you to know that before pitching to us." Ouch. Kyle's face went pale, but he kept going, fumbling through slides. Then he hit one of my altered facts where I had sneakily replaced recent statistics with numbers from 5 years ago. Our data shows that organic grocery sales are down 30% nationwide. The client cut him off again, clearly annoyed. Now, that's simply not true. Where are you getting this from? At this point, my manager looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. The rest of the team was side-eyeing each other like, what on earth is happening? And me. I had to bite my lip so hard to keep from laughing that I almost left a marked out by the time Kyle wrapped up. The client had completely checked out. They politely excused themselves and said they'd reconsider if our agency was the right fit. Translation: we blew it. When the client left, the room was dead silent. You could practically hear Kyle sweating. Then my manager turned to him and asked, very slowly, Kyle, where exactly did you get this deck? Kyle shifted uncomfortably, mumbling, I worked on it last night. That was my cue. I leaned forward, keeping my tone calm but pointed. Funny, I said, because I noticed those exact slides in my folder yesterday with some notes I had marked as draft only. I didn't think anyone would actually use them. The manager's eyes flicked between us, realization dawning. Rehook, remember when I said earlier that Kyle's smirk felt like he was asking me? What are you going to do about it, kiddo? Well, this was my answer. Kyle's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but he had nothing. No excuses. Just silence. The meeting ended with my manager asking Kyle to stay behind for a chat. I walked out with the rest of the team, and one of my coworkers whispered that was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. I won't lie, felt like I was floating. But little did I know, the fallout wasn't even close to over yet. After the disastrous client meeting, the tension in the office was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Everyone knew Kyle had messed up, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Well, except me. I didn't need to say anything. My work had already spoken for itself. Later that afternoon, our manager called me into his office. I'll admit, my stomach dropped at first. I didn't want to get dragged into Kyle's mess. But instead of being in trouble, I walked into a conversation that honestly made my week. Manager. So, I looked at the file history on the shared drive. Me, innocently, oh, manager, funny thing. The file Kyle used was last modified by you, and then copied by him. He leaned back, giving me this look like he already knew the full story. I just smiled politely and said, well, I can't control what people take from my drafts, can I? My manager chuckled, shook his head, and said something that nearly made me laugh out loud. Don't worry, everyone saw what happened today. It's not on you. In fact, I'd like you to represent the real version of your campaign tomorrow with the corrected data to the client. I already called them and explained there was a mix-up. My heart did a little victory dance. Not only was Kyle's attempt to steal my work exposed, but I was now being given the spotlight to actually shine. The next day, I presented my campaign, the polished, accurate version, and the client loved it. They ended up signing the deal, praising our agency for redeeming itself after the rough first impression. Kyle, meanwhile, wasn't invited to that second meeting. In fact, for the next 2 weeks, he was noticeably quieter. No smug comments. No kiddo jokes, no hovering over my desk like he owned the place. It was like he had been completely deflated. And then came the final cherry on top. At our monthly all-hands meeting, our manager publicly congratulated me for securing the Greensnout account and highlighted the creativity of my campaign. The applause from my coworkers was genuine, and when I glanced across the room, Kyle was sitting there clapping stiffly, looking like he had just swallowed a lemon. Sweet, sweet revenge. From then on, Kyle never tried to steal my work again. He still strutted around sometimes, but he knew better than to underestimate me. The balance of power had shifted, and all it took was a cleverly placed draft file and a little patience. Because here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always have to be cruel or destructive. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting someone dig their own hole in, then watching as they fall straight into it. And honestly, watching Kyle crash and burn with my Greensnout presentation will forever live rent-free in my memory.